Hello and welcome to this video quick start guide for the Origin Effects DELUXE55 Tweed Recreation Pedal. The DELUXE55 is an all-analog amp recreation pedal that accurately captures all the sound and feel of the famous Fender Tweed Deluxe amp. When we describe a pedal as an amp recreation, what we mean is that the pedal contains an entire vintage valve amp style signal path, including preamp, power amp and rectifier simulation, all recreated in miniature using meticulously designed transistor-based circuitry. This level of detail is why our amp recreations sound and feel so convincing to play. Because the sound is recreated so accurately, the DELUXE55 can be used in many kinds of rig. It can be used into a traditional amp, replace an amp altogether as part of a more modern rig, such as a direct-to-PA rig with a cab sim, or be used in place of an amp block with a modeler. We'll show you how to hook up all these different rigs later in this video, but first, let's get connected. The DELUXE55 requires a 9V DC power source with a 2.1mm center negative connector. The power supply must be able to provide 100mA or greater. The instrument and amp connectors accept standard 1/4" mono instrument cables. The high internal headroom of the DELUXE55 allows for compatibility with a range of pedals and pickup configurations. We'll be looking at different ways of integrating the DELUXE55 into your setup later in this video. For now, we'll be running the DELUXE55 with a Tweed Deluxe impulse response from our Origin Effects IR cab library. The DELUXE55 is made up of two sections, the amp recreation circuitry and the post EQ. Let's begin with the amp recreation controls. The drive control adjusts how clean or overdriven the tone is. Like the volume control of a vintage amp, lower settings will produce a great clean tone, before moving through crunch to the famous fuzzy tones of a heavily overdriven Tweed Deluxe. These higher settings will be fat, compressed and lots of fun to play. The drive control is also interactive with the tone control and preamp switch. The level control sets the output from the pedal and has no effect on the tone. Turn clockwise to increase overall volume. When using the DELUXE55 with a traditional amp, the best results will be achieved with your amp set to a clean tone. To ensure you're not adding volume and boosting your amp, it can be useful to compare the pedal's tone with the bypass signal. Turning the tone control clockwise will increase the amount of treble, resulting in a brighter sound. Like a real Tweed Deluxe, the tone control will also increase overall gain above 2 o'clock. To counter this, reduce the drive control when using higher tone control settings. The preamp switch reconfigures the pedal's preamp stage to mimic swapping a 12A-Y7 valve for a 12A-X7 valve. This is a popular modification for the Tweed Deluxe, with each mode having a different tonal character. The 12A-Y7 mode represents the stock valve installed in a real Tweed Deluxe. This is the lower gain of the two modes and has a brighter tone, great for articulate edge of breakup and crunch tones. The 12A-X7 mode mimics the effect of swapping that 12A-Y7 for a 12A-X7 valve. This mode adds more gain and reduces treble. The 12AX7 mode also lowers the frequency at which the tone control operates. This higher gain darker setting delivers warm lead tones and gives access to over-the-top fuzz-like Tweed distortion. Now let's move on to the post EQ circuit. The post EQ circuit is a filter placed after the amp recreation circuitry, ensuring compatibility with a variety of setups. Traditional guitar amps tend to have a lot of tone shaping going on in the preamp, such as boosting treble and cutting mids. This filter tailors the output of the pedal to suit the voicing of different amps, effectively cancelling out the tone shaping in the amp's preamp. This means you no longer need to sacrifice your amp's clean tone to get the best out of your pedal, or vice versa. Mode 1 is designed to match with the voicing of black panel Fender amps and other bright sounding amplifiers, rolling off lots of high-end and boosting mids. Mode 2 is designed to match with the voicing of Marshall style amps and other amps with a darker, more mid-rich sound. This setting removes highs more gently and doesn't exaggerate the mid-range as much as Mode 1. The flat setting is designed to be used with cabinet simulators or with neutral power amps and guitar speaker cabinets. Because these devices don't have an inbuilt voicing in the same way traditional guitar amps do, no filtering is required. The flat setting gives you the unadulterated sound of the DELUXE55. When the post EQ mode switch is set to 1 or 2, the post EQ knob adjusts the shape of the filter applied to the pedal's output. This allows you to further tweak the sound of the DELUXE55 to match your preferred amp settings. Turning clockwise will increase bass while reducing treble. Turning counterclockwise will decrease bass while increasing treble. This control is inactive when the post EQ mode switch is set to flat. For an example of how to use this control, we've connected the DELUXE55 to a Fender Deluxe Reverb amp. As we're running into a Fender amp, we'll select Mode 1 on the post EQ switch, which rolls off a lot of top end to counter the big treble boost from the Fender's preamp. If we were to use the flat mode you heard earlier, or the more Marshall-friendly Mode 2, we'd likely still have too much high end, which may be too harsh when used through the Deluxe Reverb. Now that we have Mode 1 selected, we can use the post EQ knob to adjust the filtering on the pedal's output to our liking. Now that we've found the sweet spot for our setup and amp settings, we can enjoy the sound of the DELUXE55 and our amp's clean tone without compromise. The exact position of the post EQ knob will vary depending on your amp and your amp's settings, so this is best dialed in by ear on a case-by-case basis. This adjustability can be incredibly useful when using backline amps or when changing your amp's tone stack settings. Now let's look at signal chain placement and how you might integrate this pedal into your setup. Because the DELUXE55 is an amp recreation which produces the sound and response of a vintage valve amp, it should be placed after any pedals that typically go at the start of the chain. Place the DELUXE55 after fuzz, wah, compression, overdrive and boost pedals, and any modulations that you prefer before your main drive tone. Any time-based effects that would typically be used after your main drive tone should be placed after the DELUXE55. This includes delay, reverb, and any modulation effects that you prefer after your main drive tone. When using the DELUXE55 into the front of a traditional amp, best results will be achieved with a clean amp tone. You'll need to use the correct post EQ settings to work with the voicing of your amp. With the right post EQ settings, turning on the DELUXE55 should be like switching seamlessly to a second channel on your amp. Or, if you leave the DELUXE55 always on, it can transform a very ordinary backline amp into a very convincing Tweed Deluxe tone. When using the DELUXE55 to completely replace an amp and run direct to the PA, we can keep the same signal chain, leaving the DELUXE55 on all the time as our core amp tone. This time, we'll set the post EQ to flat, as we want the natural sound of the DELUXE55, and we don't have the voicing of an amp to worry about. Now, you can use your other pedals to boost the DELUXE55, just like you would with a real amp. Simply place a cabinet simulator at the end of the chain and run that signal straight to the PA. For use with a power amp and cab, we can keep the same signal chain, with time-based effects placed after the DELUXE55. We still want the post EQ set to flat, as the power amp will have a very neutral sound. In place of the cab sim, simply hook your last pedal up to the input of your power amp. You can also do this by connecting to the effects return of a normal guitar amp, assuming your amp has a series effects loop and can support this kind of setup. Connecting your effects chain to the effects return of your amp will disable the amp's preamp, effectively turning it into a neutral power amp. The DELUXE55 can also be used to replace an amp block in a modeler, providing your modeler has send and return jacks. You might want to do this to get back the realism of an analog amp recreation, while retaining the convenience of the modeler's other effects and presets. Simply connect the send from your modeler to the DELUXE55's instrument jack, and connect the amp jack to the modeler's return input. Now, use a send and return block in your modeler instead of an amp block, and observe all the signal chain tips mentioned earlier. You should now have all the information you need to get the most out of the DELUXE55 in your rig. For any specific questions or troubleshooting, please contact support@origineffects.com. Don't forget to watch our DELUXE55 sample settings and other videos, and check out the rest of our product range at origineffects.com. Thanks for watching.